It's a big decision by the United States Supreme Court quashing or striking off Donald Trump's tariff policy. It's a big blow to the Trump administration. It was a showcase policy both in the domestic politics front and the foreign policy front, and it's going to have consequences, huge consequences for both sides. Domestically, it comes just ahead of midterm polls. And as I said, this was Donald Trump's showcase policy, and the voters would now decide based on what is right and wrong, because the Supreme Court has said Donald Trump crossed his brief as President of the United States. He is not authorized as per law to impose those tariffs which he did under International Economic Emergency Powers Act of 1977. Now, what this ruling does is it strikes off almost 75% of the tariffs that were imposed by Donald Trump since the Liberation Day announcement in April last year. This means that about $130 billion worth of tariffs that the American government collected in its treasury through the importers would need to be given back. And that's a huge sum of money going back out of the US government treasury, and that's going to have consequences and dominoes. So far as American private corporations are concerned, the markets are responding in a green territory, which means that it's good for the private corporations of the United States because wherever they were manufacturing, for example in Vietnam, China, India, etc., those tariffs would go. And so far as the American local markets are concerned, they are responding to it favorably. Now look at the politics part. Trump is to make his State of the Union address to the Congress next week, and this ruling comes just ahead of that. So Trump gets to posture a lot, and he has already called this ruling disgrace. It was a split ruling with the 6-3 and 3 justices appointed in the earlier Trump administration dissenting. But the fact is that not many options might be available to Donald Trump to reverse this, given the fact that US Supreme Court has ruled after 3 earlier lower courts ruling similarly, which means that there is a strong precedence now in terms of courts ruling to quash or disagreeing with Donald Trump's tariff policy. It's going to have huge consequences in domestic politics, coming as it does ahead of midterm polls, which are slated in a couple of months, slated to take place in a couple of months. And then, of course, for whatever posturing he gets to do in the State of the Union address, $130 billion worth of tariffs that have been collected by the US government to be returned. Now, there is another side to it. The Trump administration was projecting that for the first time in recent history, their overall trade deficit has come down below $1 trillion at about $904 billion. These were reports just a couple of days back, and they showed it as proof of the success of tariff policy, and that's why perhaps the American president has reacted with some anger and frustration, calling this ruling a disgrace. Having said that, it's a ruling of the Supreme Court of the United States, and the US government, if Trump still wants to continue with this tariff policy, would need to find a way out. There might be some provisions available because ultimately, remember, it's a presidential style of government where executive powers are strongly centralized in the office of the President of the United States. So obviously the White House would have some aces up its sleeves and might still trump the ruling. The Trump administration might still trump the SC ruling. But be that as it may, insofar as India, United States trade is concerned, trade deal, final bit of it is still in the works, even as an interim agreement has been agreed upon. And in fact, an Indian team is traveling to the United States next week and is going to be there in Washington, D.C. and talk things out insofar as the final deal is concerned, to be signed sometime in April.